get started this morning. Thank you all for coming. I'm Mike Aspenson. I'm the president of NEPCO. And for those who don't know, NEPCO's been around for about 22 years here in the community, and we're an association of HOAs. And there's 47 HOAs, and we do, with Woodmoor being the biggest member, but we have probably 9,000 homes or so represented in all the HOAs that we have. And we do informational briefings. 6 times a year we bring in sheriffs and state legislature representatives, fire chiefs, all kinds of government organizations to talk to our members about what's going on around them. And so as part of our activities, we've been doing some work reviewing land development projects that may affect quality of life, transportation, those kinds of things over the last few years. And so we've had connections with the county of El Paso and helped them critique some of these development plans for lighting and traffic and things like that. As part of that work, El Paso and NEP had a discussion, and we talked about having community meetings where we brought the neighbors that were maybe directly affected by some of these developments to basically come in and talk to developers. There's nothing required in the El Paso County planning process. And Matt, where are you? Oh, there you go. That's right there. If I misspeak these correctly, that requires a developer to do community engagements prior to submitting a plan or walking a plan through the county for approval and subsequent build out. But we suggested that maybe they do it, they recommend it to the developers so we could get some neighbors that are more directly involved with some of these and impacted by some of these plans to basically have a discussion with the developer before they get way down the road. And then there's a bigger issue. So that's what culminated in this meeting is that Keith Kennedy and Garrison companies are interested in developing a piece of property adjacent to the high school on Fall Ridge. And he put the plan together, and in the county's review process, they suggested to Keith that they contact NEPCO to facilitate a community discussion about the plans. So about a month ago, I think Keith and I started getting emails and phone calls. We talked about who should be here, and I started getting some HOAs notified, fire departments notified, fire chiefs, District 38, things like that. And of course, Woodmoor's going to probably be supplying water to development and sanitation, as well as they have the biggest HOA that's really directly close to that. But word is spread. I think we have some other people from other areas of the monument area, and I welcome you all. And I'm going to kind of moderate the thing, but for the most part, Keith Kennedy from Garrison's going to basically do an informational brief today. He's going to tell you the background of the project and what they'd like to do. What I understand, if they're applying right now to rezone the property, it's currently zoned commercial. And you can see if you go over there, there's things like storage businesses and things adjacent to it, small warehouses, things like that, just south of this property. And they want to rezone for residential, high density residential. And I'll let Heath take you through the rest of this. Please note your concerns. NEPCO's not taking a position on it. We don't know that much about it other than what Heath told me over the telephone. And the plans currently on the El Paso County website is it EDARP, is that how you say it? Yeah. EDARP. Are a little bit out of date. I think they were talking about over 300 units of apartments, and they've adjusted their plans. You'll hear about that the new plan today. With that, I'd like to just introduce maybe around the table so people know who the speakers and the representatives from Garrison are. I've already introduced myself, and we'll start with you folks, Keith, and we'll go around the room.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Keith Kennedy with the Garrett Companies. Garrett Companies is based out of Indianapolis with a second headquarter in Lone Tree, Colorado. And as I did in the presentation, presentation, I'll give a little more information on the company and our experience. I'm a development manager overseeing this project.
I'm Jordan Reisman. I'm on the investments team at the Garrett Companies.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Harmon. I'm the Director of Development for the Garrett Companies.
Good morning, my name is Bill Blake, and I'm the Development Manager along with the team.
Ross Culbertson, Development Associate.
I'm Brett Ridgway, School District 38. Jamie Bumgarner, I'm the Division Chief Fire Marshal for Monument Fire.
Dave Bessler, Medical Board, also HOA, Red Rock Ranch.
Beth Lundquist, Red Rock Ranch, Firewise, NEPCO.
I'm looking at new developments in that area and president of West Oak Ridge.
Matt Simmons with El Paso County Planning.
Peter Belly with Woodmoor Improvement Association, Vice President.
Ron Bush, I'm the president of Woodmoor Improvement Association on this facility, but not to confuse you with the shirt, I'm also the president of Woodmoor Water and Sanitation, and so I'm not really representing them here today, I'm representing Woodmoor, but we do have a board meeting later this afternoon, and I will apologize in advance because one of my other responsibilities as part of Kiwanis is to go pick up food. It's over here and delivered to the Mennonite Church, so I'll start with 10 o'clock. You'll see me sneak out of here and disappear. Thank you.
Two of the quick points. There's a bathroom right to the back if you need it. And also, please mute or stun your phones so we don't get phone calls in the middle of the meeting. Yes.
Everybody needs to sign in too.
Yes. Oh, yes. And also, please, there's a sign-in sheet. I'd like to get everybody's contact data so we can maintain communication path with all the members here and the attendees. Thank you.
We really do have to represent from Woodmoor Water and Sanitation. Ariel is our engineer.
Welcome, everybody. All of you.
Okay. So our presentation, I'll try and keep it brief. I know you're going to have a ton of questions, probably have some concerns. If you have a question, it's a quick question about the slide or something, please raise your hand. I'll answer it. I want to make sure that, being thorough enough in the description of our proposed plans. If you've got concerns, let's try and save those towards the end if we can. I'm going to go through talking about the project as we kind of evolved since we first discovered the piece of property that is under, that was for sale, where we are today. And then, obviously, at the end, we'll go over questions. So, I won't go through all of this, but just some of the highlights from here. These already explained the headquartered in suburb within Minneapolis, Greenwood, and we also have a large group of individuals in Lone Tree. We specialize in Class A, boutique style, multifamily, and mixed-use development projects. We're approaching 200 employees. We've completed over 50 projects. We are a national developer and contractor for our projects. So not only do we buy the land and develop it, we are the contractor as well.
Could you just say a few words about what does it mean by Class A versus Class B, or what does that mean?
I guess I would define Class A as a luxury style apartment. We have a lot of amenities, pool, dog park, and I'll go through some of the details in this where you'll see some pictures and examples of the types of apartment complexes that we construct.
Okay.
Just a brief list. This isn't all of the projects that we've completed, but you can see that we have experience from Longmont all the way down to Colorado Springs. We've really made a presence here in the last 6 years, 7 years. I don't know if any you two might be able to provide some details of probably the closest projects that we have if somebody wanted to go or if any of you wanted to go drive through those existing developments.
Yeah, I'd say Briargate, we have a few in that area.
Which one of those is Briargate?
You'll see, oh, here we go.
Victory Ridge or still Mason?
So Victory Ridge is more Interquest.
That's close by the Interquest.
Correct. So that one's under construction currently. The Zed, that's completely done, and that's pretty close to that Briargate area, so that'd be a good one for anyone to check out. top notch.
And then probably the best thing to do would be to go on our website and you can see the full list of all the projects that we have.
But I think this Zed's a good example and probably the closest one to here.
Just a few examples of the quality of construction, the type of amenities, and what we offer residents. Examples of interiors, granite counters, very modern.
Heath, can these slides be made available afterwards? Someplace, can we post them someplace? Publicly available?
If you want, you can give me a copy, I can post it on the NEPCO website, as a starting point.
Yeah. And again,
If it's okay.
keep in mind, these are
Understand.
conceptual and examples of other ones that we've constructed. Every project is unique depending on the demographics and competition. Already spoke a little bit about the pool. We typically have an outdoor kitchen, grilling station, dog park, gaming areas. The upper right one shows an interior courtyard. We have one building that is the 64 unit that I'll get to that kind of shows a couple of the options that we construct. One on the right has the pool. So backing up, we are currently under contract to purchase the property. We have spent a considerable amount of time going through a lot of due diligence, speaking with individuals like Mike and NEPCO, Tri-Lakes Fire, Ariel at Woodmoor Water and Sand, obviously El Paso County. We've spoken with the town of Monument, and that first period of time was really just to make sure: is there water capacity? Is there transportation capacity? We've also spoken with the school district. So getting to this point is really, okay, we think we have a real project here that is going to be supported by the infrastructure from El Paso County and the other districts that provide water, sewer, fire, et cetera. And so now that we have decided to move forward with the rezoning application, which went in July 21st, we felt that now was the best time to get in touch with the neighborhood, interested parties, and make sure that we're understanding any of the concerns that are going to potentially come up before we go to the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners hearings, which will probably just depend upon some of the comments that are going to come forth as we go through the review process with El Paso County. But I would suspect later this year, first part of next year, is when this
A quick question on this map. There's a building inside your red on the south end of that. Is that, are you under contract to buy that building space too, or?
Yes. So, outlined in red, that is the property, 15.2 acres,
Okay.
south of the high school, west of the athletic facilities. The existing building here
Yeah, right down there. Yep.
is the Greater Europe Mission. I don't think it's really a church, it's more of an office building, if I understand correctly. And are they using it at all today, or is it mostly vacant?
Mostly
So
vacant.
you would knock that building down there?
Yep.
Okay.
That building will
And do you own the property now, or
be. No, we're under
you're
purchase.
negotiating?
Negotiations have been done, we have a purchase agreement in place.
Okay.
When's the close date?
Spring, Q1, Q2 next year.
Is it May?
Yeah, right around 23. Correct.
I got a question for you. You've done a traffic study,
Yeah.
and what does it show for egress during emergencies, as say for evacuation for wildland fire?
So I'll get to that in a minute. Any other questions on the location, the property itself? I do want to point out that in the El Paso County Master Plan, this particular area is identified as a regional center place type, and as part of that place type, multifamily is a primary land use as designated in George, El Paso County. The property is currently zoned commercial service, and we are requesting the rezone to residential multifamily community up to 30 dwelling units per acre.
Is that the RM30 designation?
Yes. I flipped this 90 degrees on you. So to the left is the 3-story, 64-unit, we call it a donut building that has that interior courtyard. This one would not have an interior pool, but more likely activity, gaming, and then the pool would be located. Is there a way to next to it? Would be located
You
here
have a stick for a pointer?
next to the car.
So where's north and south?
So north would be to your left.
So that big unit would be right on the road that goes into the school, the high school.
A little bit to the south. I think the road is a little bit further than the north property line. I don't think it goes right on.
It's pretty close. I don't know, I haven't, when I went there, it was pretty close to the open field. So that would be on the northwest corner of that lot.
Correct. And then you got Monument Hill Road. And then this is where the existing building is today. And then to the south of our proposed detention pond, this is the self-storage project that I think was recently completed over in Yale. So the other buildings it would consist of 20 2-story buildings at 10 units each. There are 10 garages that tuck under on every one of those units, so 200 total.
So where's the parking for the big building? Is that around the outside of it?
Yep, that would be the perimeter here.
So these are 3-story buildings?
This building here is the only 3-story.
And it's a
Okay,
40-foot limit?
Yeah, but if there's a garage underneath, doesn't that make it,
Not under this one, there's not.
no, I know, but on the other ones?
On the other ones,
The garage is the first floor on those,
And then there's a second and third floor.
no, there's just a second floor. The smaller buildings are just 2
So
stories
how
total.
tall are they?
The 2 stories, those are about,
I would say 35 feet, it's gonna be like a regular house.
yeah, we have a 40-foot height restriction that we will be adhering to.
So no taller than the high school is?
I don't know what the height
I'm
is.
not sure of the height of the high school.
Because I'm right behind there and I don't want to have my viewing.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the 2-story buildings, where you can see in lighter gray, those are gonna look more like a town. So the first floor garage, in the back there are 3 units, and then on above that, there are 7 units.
Are you going to regrade? Because I noticed driving it this morning, it's obviously a lot higher than Monument Hill Road.
Yes, so the high spot's gonna come down, the low spot's gonna come up, and it'll get leveled basically from north to south.
So what's the estimated population of this development? The resident population?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably around 450, right around there. It's tough to say exactly, it varies project to project.
And I know you were going to speak about ingress and egress, which will be the main routes in and out.
Would you get to that?
Let me get to that. But I do want to answer the question about the number of residents. So we're looking at roughly 39% is 1-bedroom units, 52% is 2-bedroom, and 9% are 3-bedroom units. You said-
So that's where you get your number of bedrooms? Roughly.
And kind of just knowing our other properties and
So you said how many?
450.
450, 500.
exactly, yeah.
Okay, so the main entrance in and out will be on Monument Hill at this point here. 660 feet plus south of the entrance into the school, and that is to meet the county engineering standards. So this would be the main entrance, clubhouse and leasing center here. And then we're proposing a secondary right-in, right-out only to provide additional ingress, egress. And then we would have additional ingress, egress on the base camp road cul-de-sac. And then lastly,
Is there a driveway? I don't see a driveway, I can draw it. Is there a driveway? Is it just a large driveway?
yes, this would be.
Oh, there it is.
And then lastly, for amenities, an enclosed dog park. Okay. Any additional questions on the ingress egress? I know you mentioned fire. That is not part of the traffic studies that we completed, and I'm going to have to defer to Tri-Lakes Fire if they have any requirements or studies or other items that we need to be aware of as far as wildfire mitigation.
You expect any traffic control, or you were requesting any traffic control signals on Monument Hill Road?
The traffic study did not warrant any improvements in Monument Hill Road and to egress points on Monument.
But
Will
the
satisfy the engineering standards for that.
is the traffic study available for people to look at?
It is on the EDAR.
It's on EDAR. So for those interested, it is on EDAR. Go look at it.
Is it recently on there? So when I can't find it, it's a 2015 traffic study.
I saw one the other day, it's on there, but it's got some significant problems. I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. The first one being the speed limit is incorrect on Monument Hill Road. It says it's 35, but it's really 45. But,
And I see John back there. We'll bring him up and see if we can get some of those. So John, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm John Heiberger. I'm with Kinley Morgan Associates. We're the civil engineering consulting firm. We produced the traffic study that you're speaking about, and as Heath mentioned, it is posted on EDAR as part of the publicly available submittal package, so everybody's able to have access to that review.
If I could ask you, Paul, for those of you who don't know, was with the NEPCO for many years, and he's still a member of NEPCO, and he was our Transportation and Land Use Committee Chairman for many years, and he helped write the El Paso County Plan documents and input to the process to Nina and the folks there. And so he's got a lot of experience doing traffic analysis as well as it's not land development for us, it's NEPCO. So maybe you could connect with him after the meeting.
Yeah, I'd be happy to chat with you, and if there is an error on the speed limit, we'll fix that.
And then Paul, you and I can discuss how we deal with that.
Sure. And I'd be, more than willing to field any other questions you have on it or issues that you might see with it. Out of full disclosure, am not the traffic engineer. I'm a civil engineer, but I don't do traffic specifically. I can speak to it pretty readily, but Curtis Rowe is the traffic engineer in my office who actually authored that study, but I'm happy to field any questions and take those back to Curtis or revise accordingly.
just one overall other point is that it does, the traffic counts were taken in June, which of course the high school was no longer in session. And it does say it tried to do student counts for it, but it never looked at the elementary school nearby or the middle school nearby. And anyways, those are some of the biggies that need to be addressed, I think. But anyways, I'll talk to you afterwards.
And I think that was just a function of our application timing, and we did do our best to incorporate traffic count numbers that we anticipated when high school was in session, but we can chat more about that afterwards.
Thanks.
And Paul, just for your information, District 38 and WIA submitted a request to the county to install a traffic signal similar to what's on Jackson Creek by the high school at Palmer Ridge High School, and just recently got a response that they don't believe that the manual that governs traffic warrants that, and so they declined our request. I have yet to decide how high I'm going to elevate that.
That's one where the buses turn and do the little.
It's the one right on Palmer Ridge, right where the students come in and
Right.
out. We perform security services there with Woodmoor Public Safety, and we have some concerns over the safety of our officers.
So you're adding approximately how many cars per day to the road?
I've got some notes here, one second.
We have 527 parking spaces.
Yeah, so what the study concluded was specifically, I think we were kind of focusing on the south part here at Woodmoor and the 105 intersection a little bit. So the study, even with the additional counts that we incorporated, anticipated counts, I should say, for when high school is in session, anticipates increasing that traffic volume by no more than 20% at that 105 Woodmoor intersection, and that's with 109 projects, trip generation, with 2,022 counts unadjusted, 1,144 of those existing. So, yeah, we're definitely increasing traffic, but no more than 20% based on the industry standard calculations for what we're adding at that south intersection.
Let me give you another little piece of input, because I personally drive along County Line Road, which is the north end of that road. And during school sessions, that's quite a thing to watch. People line up to turn south on Monument Middle Road, from County Line Road to north, to school in the mornings and afterwards at night. There's already a lot of people hitting the brakes and accelerating quickly from that intersection. And if people leave that new development, some of them will go not just south to Woodmoor, down to Woodmoor and 105, but they're going to go north, because some will work in Denver, they'll work in Castle. So there will be traffic, and that road, if you drive it right there on the north end of that road, it's very curvy, and there's been some major accidents there already. So I guess I just put that as a note of concern, that we take a look at that piece, because there are no lights there, and it's just jump in when you can. And we have a lot of students driving to and from school on that intersection, and we had people, additional commuters coming and going from that intersection. I think we just need to take a look at that and assess the traffic at that particular junction. It's a key intersection coming into the county. Anyway, I don't know if that was addressed, but.
I actually read my mind, because I live on the north side of Dillwood, and there's another development that they're proposing. It's not their responsibility.
Right.
But the traffic impact assessment for that planned development, I was reading this morning, and I don't know if you guys are talking to each other, but if there's going to be a lot more traffic, if they can actually get all the apartments and houses on the north side, and you're going to have these new development on the south side, it's going to be so congested.
I'll leave with the general comment on the traffic. I think in our past years with NEPCO, we've tried to get some inputs to take a bigger perspective of traffic flow over the years, because all the developers, and this is no digging at what you guys are doing, but they seem to be focused on the immediate traffic flow in and out of their development. But nobody looks out at the next level of intersections and then adds all the developments that are going in around it and how they flow to these major junction points. And we're living with it now on 105. At certain times of the day, we get backups all the way back past the Monument Academy at times. Because the county okayed every development myopically with only the cars that they had. But nobody's doing the system-wide analysis that says, when we get 6 new developments now over the next 5 years, there's not 400 cars, it's 4,000 cars. And they're hitting those same traffic lights. And now we have Monument doing a Jackson Creek Parkway North expansion, and they're trying to alleviate some of that traffic congestion that's at that intersection on 105 and Jackson Creek and all those traffic lights in there. And this development will also flow into that same reservoir of traffic. at certain times of the day. So it's not necessarily just your problem, but I think, Matt, the county needs to have, maybe we'll talk to, we're gonna have the county commissioners come and talk to NEPCO in November. Both Holly, depending on who wins, and Stan will be here in this building, and we'll talk to them specifically about traffic issues that need to be taken one level out. Because we do have choke points now, we see them. And our guy that did it, Tom Biersbaugh, I don't know if some of you may remember Tom, but he was giving inputs to the county to look at the bigger picture. And it's not always done, I guess.
I would add to that, as a developer, we rely on the government, the jurisdiction to perform those analyses as part of the Your El Paso County Master Plan. And so from the county standpoint, they are to be looking at what are the land uses for whatever area in those master plans are transportation plans. And so we are relying, so to speak, on the government to tell us whether or not they have the capacity for that network. And if they don't, then that's generally when you see developers widening roads or building roads, etc.
And just the last two things I might say on that is, we did actually with this one, try to go above and beyond, as a result of some of the early conversations with the county, we definitely tried to go above and beyond. We studied the intersection down at 105 in Woodmoor, which is well beyond the distance we're required to. We actually went all the way up and studied at Monument Hill Road and County Line. So between 105 and County Line, we've looked at the whole thing. So we're trying to definitely take into account some of those concerns. And
You might want to revisit that in school.
yeah, and maybe that's something. The second thing I was going to say is we're still under that first round of review with the county, and so I'm sure the traffic engineer is going to be providing some of those same thoughts, and we'll work to address comments.
So maybe let's go back to your presentation. We'll note that as a topic that we need to talk further about.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah.
As we looked at Woodmoor Drive, because Woodmoor Drive is a significant cut through between Furrow and 105. And we get a lot of traffic down it now, and the speed limit is 30, and they're not going 30 miles an hour. So, I think that would be something that should be looked at as far as how much traffic that road can handle.
Yeah, I don't believe off the top of my head that we did look at that in the traffic study, but I'll take note for sure.
If I saw your map correctly, you have 3 ingress egresses, you have 2 on the Monument Hill Road and 1 on the base camp road.
That's correct. So this one would be full movement.
Is that a circle? Or is that just
Yeah, there's a little roundabout feature
Little roundabout.
to get into off of Monument Hill into the. This is right in, right out. So you would not be able to take a left in if you were going southbound on Monument, or take a left out to go southbound.
And then your base camp is going to feed into Deer Creek, or then Woodmoor Drive.
So there's one more point.
Is there room for a center turn lane there? Monument Hill Road?
I don't believe there is.
Because if you have people coming south, Denver Castle line, they get off the county line, head east on county line, and then south on Monument Hill Road, and say it's a busy time in the afternoon, between 2 and 4, they're going to try to take a left east.
I think that was one of the things the study did recommend, that a left turn lane be introduced there.
We did recommend that for sure.
Are you going to try to realign Monument Hill Road then, because there's not room in that footprint now?
Yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head, I'll be honest, whether or not there is enough pavement width there today, but the study does conclude and warrant that.
That's south right away on one side, so you'd have to come east.
Right, and so we'll look at that a little bit further to figure out exactly how that gets built. We're not quite there yet, but the study does warrant that southbound left.
Did you guys put the circle in, or did the county recommend the circle?
Turn on
That was just ours.
And that's not actually within the right of way, that's.
That's inside the development property, okay.
I don't know if I have any more to add here. Somebody mentioned parking. County requires 527. 200 of those are attached garage spaces.
One other point, I mean, that site is very close to I-25. And it's one thing to have commercial buildings in there. Have you considered any noise or sound barrier or?
Yep, so we are completing noise study. Is that been?
It's not found out, it's underway.
Yeah.
So that's currently underway. The results of that study will be incorporated into the design requirements for sound with windows insulation.
Okay, because I think the residents appreciate that, and the units.
Yeah.
Details for a second.
Yeah, we'll know the results of that study.
This would answer your question on heights. Overall.
On the right side.
35 feet, so what a typical residential two-story home. So you can see the garage is in the upper left.
Yeah, he's asking the height.
Okay.
You turned your head and you spoke, I couldn't hear you.
So yeah, 35 feet should be pretty standard.
So what on the three-story building, what's that height?
40 feet. So it tops out at.
Yeah, 40 feet is the maximum height for the RM.
And if you go back. And we actually built almost an identical building to this in Castle Rock.
If you would you stand?
Yeah. So we almost built an exact prototype of this in Castle Rock. It's called Avalon at the Meadows. If you want to go drive by, and you'll see that height and get a feel for it.
Is that the building, look of the building?
Very almost 90 to 95%. It's very similar. The orientation is a little bit different where the one in Castle Rock has some garages on the side, but the height is nearly identical, and then the facade, I would say, is identical.
Do you have any three-story examples in Castle Rock or nearby?
Three-story here, then another all four-story. Let me think about that. Yeah.
Thanks.
So here's an example of the 3-story, 64-unit building in the north end. Quality material, stone. Maybe start along this. We haven't obviously developed our plans for this. Flat siding.
Yeah, usually a hardy or some type of variation of the cementitious siding. So we utilize high quality materials.
Let me ask you a question about your baseline, the management of the baseline meaning. Baseline meaning what you're proposing now. You changed from the EDAR plan to this plan, and that plan has been updated. So if citizens want to see your plan, they're going to go to the EDAR site, look at that, and not know that you've got a different plan in mind. So are you have plans that update that EDAR with this information? And if you change in the future, we see developers change their mind and do something different and not notify the public of an update. So how is that process going to work?
Yeah, so we had 2 plans initially, and they were very conceptual. They were the first 2 that came off the press, so to speak. And the purpose for those was we were trying to get something into the county to get an early assistance need. And from that point, all that Jordan explained, kind of the transition of those.
Because rather than explain maybe the history, do you have plans to change, what is your process to change what your plan is going to be you're built to design these buildings and layout, and if you change it, how will we know?
Say, Mike, what's currently on EDAR is their current plan.
They've updated.
It's all there, it's all updated. The only thing that's not updated, quite frankly, is El Paso County's description of it at the top, which talks about 300 and 350 units and all that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
so you went.
Which is, it'd be nice to say this is history and something different there.
So I think that's a note to
It's
that.
all there. It's all there. So-
Yeah, really, any
So if you change it in the
changes,
future-
any changes beyond this point are going to be driven by community feedback, county
Okay.
comments.
All right, good.
Our goal is to try to make this plan as closely as possible,
Okay.
and that's where we're
All
at.
right, thank you.
Yep.
Sample elevation of the clubhouse and leasing center. So, as I mentioned, we submitted our application on the 21st. We expect to go to planning commission sometime either. Again, it's just going to depend on how many comments there are, how long the review process takes, how long it takes us to make those revisions. Currently, we're being a little bit conservative, and so we're planning on a February planning commission and March Board of County Commissioners. At some point in time, when we feel comfortable, whether it's county comments or district comments, working with the neighborhood and the rest of the community, we will start working on additional plan and applications. So we will have to submit civil engineering, construction documents. There are 2 lots today, so we have to combine those to dedicate new easements for probably water and sewer. That will be contained in the final plat application. Those can go simultaneous. And then once the rezone is complete and we get through a round or 2 on the final plat, we can submit our site development plan application. And right now we're targeting a February date for that. And then that would move through that May, June timeline to get all approvals where I got that on construction starts spring.
Summer 23. So that's when you start moving dirt, that's when you like to start moving dirt.
All right. I'll open it up to other questions, concerns, comments. Is there anything, I guess from the people up front here in some of the districts that you have concerns from fire, where all we've been talking about water and sewer capacity?
Also fire, the school.
And anything that,
Well, I'm fairly new in school.
You want to stand up?
I'm fairly new in the school district, but I'd like to see the student generation data that you've got on that. Also, I'm interested in what is the barrier to proposing on the east side and north side of, I think, the school district property. We want to make sure that we don't have, transfer over to trying to use sports fields and things like that from your property.
our plan was to put a fence around the entire perimeter.
Can y'all speak up? We can't hear you back here.
Folks, maybe you can repeat what he said.
Yeah, so 2 questions. One, student generation numbers, and then the second was fencing or having some sort of a perimeter barrier from the athletic fields to high school. So the second question, yes, we are planning on putting up a perimeter fence. The first, I've been in touch with Chris, trying to understand what this, typically, the school districts provide us what that generation rate is for students based on the number of bedrooms that they're proposing. I don't know if the school district has that. I believe there was a study that was completed maybe a year or 2 ago about district-wide capacity at all levels.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so I can check on that, but whatever calculation you got right now.
What was the reason that you created a third egress on Basecamp Road, rather than just the 2 on Monument?
Because it was there and just provided another point of ingress egress.
I can also speak to, we're going to require that.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Maybe for protesting purposes, but not necessarily for residents.
Can I just go ahead and speak now?
Yeah.
So, good morning, my name is Jamie Bumgarner, I'm the Division Chief of Administration Fire Marshal. A couple of things I want to make sure I let the group know before I proceed down a path and you're unhappy with me is, I'm just prefacing, as the fire district, we can evaluate every project that comes across our desk, just like this one, based on the statutory responsibility that we have and the ability that I have to enforce things on a developer from that point. So one of the things that I'm going to get out, and the elephant in the room, you guys are all going to look to me about the evacuation model. I am not a traffic expert. I do not do traffic counts. I have to rely on the experts to do that from that perspective. So from the fire code, there's nothing in my code that I can enforce as far as during a wildfire evacuation or an evacuation in general. Now, let me talk about what I can and what I do evaluate the project based on. This project was submitted to us whenever you say you submitted, I can't remember. But it was submitted to me on the fire district's perspective, and the first thing we evaluated in this, what you call the site plan, is fire department access and water supply. So the first thing we want to know is, what are you building there? How many gallons per minute are we going to need there in case there's a fire there inside those structures? And who's going to be providing water? Woodmoor Water and Sanitation is going to be their water provider. We work with Woodmoor Water and Sanitation on a regular basis. We know what their fire flows are. We know what their hydrant spacing is, etc. We were comfortable with the project from the perspective of, well, we have sufficient water supply for this. We'll continue to work with the developer to exactly lay out where the hydrants are going to go. But I'll tell you that, this is another one that a lot of people don't know. The three-story apartment or the three-story building will be required to have fire suppression sprinklers within the building. They're going to have a fire hydrant within 150 feet of that fire department connection on that building. The other thing we're going to require is, and Woodmoor Water, Ariel helped me with this, I think we have 1,000-foot hydrant spacing, so between every hydrant or between every structure should be no more than 500 feet for us to get water supply to the building if it were to be on fire. Another thing we look at that, and I talked about fire department access. How do we get our apparatus within that subdivision or within this planned apartment complex during a fire? Well, I'm going to tell you, the worst time for us to get in there is 2 a.m. in the morning when they've had all their friends over or whatever for a get-together, and you said there's 570 parking places?
527.
527. There's 527 parking places, and there's 542 people trying to park in those parking places. So what I do is I work with them and say, okay, here's the turning radius of my largest fire apparatus, which we call our tower ladder. Here's the turning radius for that largest truck. Put it on your subdivision and show me that I can make every turn in that subdivision I need to make. They've done that to my satisfaction. I have no problem with that. The other thing, and we talked about the Deer base camp, Deer Creek and base camp. Base camp road up there was, we wanted a third entryway, which they had already provided. We didn't require it initially. We wanted a third access off of that simply for the fact of, well, if my first truck, which is the station here on Woodmoor, goes in this main entrance and he chooses a hydrant and blocks everything else from coming in there, I want a second or third way to get other apparatus in or folks out if I need to. So that's why you see that we appreciate the left turn, right turn only on the south end, but we wanted another one off of another street just in case something happened to Monument Hill Road. We all talked about, well, what happens? It's really close to I-25. Semis roll over out there from time to time. What if he rolls over into Monument Hill Road? Now how do we get in and out of the subdivision at that point in time? So those are the things that we look at. That's not just this development, that's every development that comes across our desk. We're looking for multiple points of access in and out of there. But unfortunately, or fortunately, fire department access and water supply is what we evaluate at this point in the game. Now, as this progresses down the road and they go to Pikes Peak Regional Building and they start erecting buildings at that point in time, all of the fire codes kick in at that point, and that's when we start requiring the things like fire suppression systems I talked about for the three-story buildings, other requirements that the buildings have to meet, 2-hour rated firewalls, etc. like that. That's when all of that stuff kicks in from the fire department's perspective. We also work with every developer that we have to what, now, My code does not allow me to require it, but I work with every developer to get compliance as much as we can for Firewise. So we talk about that. Wildfire is a big thing up here. We want to make sure that we put non-combustibles just like everyone's single-family home. We want to do it in that home ignition zone around the buildings. So essentially, they're going to be fairly close. We want that as much as we can, the whole subdivision to be Firewise, so it's ignition resistant from that perspective. So those are some of the things that the fire district looks at as we move into working with developers on what comes in. Obviously, we can't have input as to whether it is or it isn't, or it's good or it's not. That's not our purview. Our purview is simply to evaluate the project presented to us, fire department access and water supply initially, and then we'll require that all the buildings meet the most current fire code, which we're under the 2015 International Fire Code today. And then as we develop, and I mean, as the years go by, we're going to upgrade to the 2021 code. I know we're behind, but that's just how code adoption goes.
So my specific question is, you're familiar with Brookmoor. Brookmoor's got additional access on the side on the south part, which is emergency only access.
Help me with Brookmoor. I'm sorry, help me with where that's at.
It's on the right side going up Lake Woodmoor.
Yes. I'm there, okay.
So they've got one way in and out of their gated community, but they have a back entrance, which is emergency only.
Correct.
Is there anything in your experience or code that would prevent base camp from being a similar type of emergency only access?
No, nothing. We have the ability, just like at Brookmoor, we have locks they can put on there that we can unlock and lock. So I don't see an issue with that if that were the decision.
My concern is, and I'm going to have to leave it shortly, but my concern is the traffic that comes out of base camp and goes on Deer Creek is probably going to go over to Woodmoor and go south. And it's just going to add, Woodmoor south right there is a main ingress egress for all of Woodmoor. For the school at certain times of the day, it's completely crazy out there. We do traffic control, and we've asked the school district for some help on changing that. So using that as an access point where anybody can just go out there and go wherever they want to go. I just think Woodmoor has some concerns about that for our residents.
Is there any consideration at all from our perspective, the density of the buildings, the closest of the buildings containing fire, spreading from building to building?
No, there's nothing in the code.
I know we build houses sometimes right next to one another, and we don't seem to care about that. When the house starts on fire, I guess, let's not go to.
Please understand we care, but the reality is there's nothing.
That is, we allow developers to build houses 6 feet apart. I've seen it. They just jam them in front and Briargate and all the other districts. So if one fire catches, and you can just have a contagion going on.
We understand the fact that when we pull up, if one's home's burning, we potentially have two burning or three.
All right.
And that's where.
So every one of our buildings will be hot fire suppression.
Okay, all right. So she just said all of their two-story will be 13R as well. So that means everything's sprinklered in that community, all the homes are.
Okay.
And then to your point, I'll say it in public, as well. Not all fires start inside the building. So they can start outside. That's why the Firewise landscaping is really important to keep it from burning, because my point of that is if a fire starts outside the building and burns up the siding and gets in the attic where there's not a sprinkler in the attic, which is not required, no homes or no business have to have them in the attic. But the other part of that is that's when you could have a large building burning and it could spread to the ones beside of it. That's why we require the water supply. We need sufficient water supply in case, worst case scenario, we need that gallon per minute requirement.
For a development like this, is a general question, maybe it's to you, Matt, I don't know. For a development like this, or any case, who puts together an evacuation assessment? Because when the fire did get started, we were getting out of control. People might panic and try to hit the road quickly and get out of there. Or God forbid if something happened at Palmer Ridge, that we see every day, and we have to evacuate the students quickly and all the emergency people responding to those kinds of instances. I mean, I don't know who because what happens typically is when something happens like the Black Forest fire, we find out that we can't get people out very quickly. We jam them up in roads and things, and we don't take a look at that big picture. So this isn't necessarily question for Garrison, maybe as much as for us as a community. How do we get, in emergency situations, if we have to get another couple thousand people out of school, and to merge the people in, and also these people are right next to it, and then that the emergency flows into that, they had another 500 vehicles, I don't know, we won't maybe all be home, but some number of vehicles on top of that. Who looks at that situation?
Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no statute in that, for the county to do any kind of a clearance evacuation study. There's no statute statewide, county-wise.
So that's a good topic for our county commissioners.
So that is something to address to the county, that is something to address to your state legislature. The next thing I'm pushing. But there is nothing that requires you to do that, to think about that. Not that you're not worried about it, and not that it drives you nuts at night when you try to go to sleep. But there's nothing that requires anybody to do anything about that. Surprise.
And think of the 3,000 homes of Woodmoor, though. You got the same
Same
problem.
problem.
I'm not saying, it hasn't been thought, and as of Paradise Fires, all of a sudden people are going, oh yeah, maybe think about this. Not that fire departments have not thought about this and worried about this forever, like what the heck have they been doing? But yes, there's no requirement at this point in time, just so that everybody understands that.
I'm sorry, I don't know anybody answer this question, but are you guys adding a path for students to get to the schools, the safe paths? Is there going to be that much more traffic? Are there sidewalks, lights, dirt path? And then also just a side note, light pollution, like how much, where the lights, safety lights, where they're going to be pointing. We got a lot of residential people that are going to be there. I know we have the freeway, but just two considerations that I hadn't heard spoken about.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea to put a path directly to school. If that's something the school district is open to, definitely alleviate some potential particular traffic. So we can definitely look at that with the school district on. As far as lighting, we pretty much provide perimeter lighting on all of the buildings for safety and security of our residents, and then also for safe ingress, egress, and would adhere to the El Paso County lighting requirements.
We would highly recommend you make it full cutoff lighting, so it goes
and
down.
that's I assume that's a city.
Can I ask the $1 million question? How much you think these apartments are going to go for? And all the amenities that you mentioned and everything, part of the push of this is affordable or attainable housing, dumped right in the middle of our wonderful area here. So if I may ask.
Yeah, I'd say the one bedrooms anywhere from $1,550 to $1,650. Two bedrooms probably $2,021, and threes will be $2,500 to $2,600.
Thank you.
So in general, we do constantly research the market trends, see where our comps are pricing their residential units at. We aren't currently planning for any affordable units. We're planning for this to be a market rate development. All of our potential residents go through background checks. We certainly, take that into consideration as well.
So let me ask that, because one of the things I read was somebody like Starbucks, and live in Colorado Springs, can't afford to live here. They're still priced out their things. So, that's kind of an invalid concern that I'm hearing. Affordable housing is kind of BS. If you look at the Safeway workers, or the Clean Supers workers, or the Starbucks workers, or whatever, the concern always been they always have to live in Colorado Springs and drive up here because there's no affordable housing up here. This isn't affordable. If you look at $10 an hour, that's $1,600 a month. Or if you look at $20 an hour, it's $1,300 a month. You guys are still priced out there.
It's not their job to provide low-income housing. That's what you're talking about.
No, they're not advertising it's affordable. It's really not.
I don't think they are. Everything I see says luxury.
Bob, I think they are.
I read it, one of the comments was affordable housing.
That's on the next door. So you can't tie them to the next door.
I read the old documents documents, I just have new documents, they're old documents read, it's safe.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going on, I just found out this morning that there's new documents.
Yeah.
And so I went.
But I'm just saying that he's, they said right there, you get the Class A.
Yeah, I understand.
Highlight.
That's one of the comments I was going to make.
Yeah.
The other one is,
That's a,
every one of these apartment complexes that come in get the same spiel spouted about affordable housing.
yes.
They're not affordable housing.
Yeah, but that's a choice they make.
I understand. I'm not commenting. I think they're in their right doing what they're doing.
And we're really looking for transitional housing, especially with these two-story buildings, that someone can come in here, try to save up money for a down payment, and ultimately move into this beautiful community next door. We're really trying to provide, we see it as affordable, but affordable relative to $750,000 home.
And I'm understanding that, and I'm not knocking what you guys are proposing at all, don't get me wrong. What I'm discussing in my mind is this is another 250 or whatever apartments, right? And supposedly we need some sort of affordable housing in the monument area. Well, I just went through briefly the other night in the monument town approvals. There's 520 already been approved. Not to mention all the vacant space where they've already been zoned for multifamily housing that the project hasn't come up. So we're looking at 520, 600, maybe 1,000 apartments already being built. These are going to come in at another 250, 300. This is not to you guys really, it's more to the community. What's that mark? Where all of a sudden say we have affordable housing? Because the town is almost rubber stamping to the point. They're coming in and they say, oh yeah, we need affordable housing. Thanks, understand. You guys are going to come in the county. The town doesn't have purview over what you're doing. Just the county does. Is the county going to understand everything? And we're going to wind up here with
I think that's
30,000 affordable housing and nobody can sell for
Well,
it.
it might be that, you could have this effect that we've never seen a project the county hasn't liked. It's tax related. So, I've been on this board for 7 years here at WIA. We're pretty much built out, so we don't depend much, but yeah, we haven't seen an opportunity there. And I know the top mining has ever seen an opportunity they didn't like to increase their tax base.
I agree.
So that's just the way it is. As far as housing pricing coming down, it's going to be when we get a plethora of homes, of apartments, of homes here.
But for the sake of this meeting, Bob, that's legitimate to discuss with the leaders of the community.
I agree with the community, so it's not their
And they'll pass the time. Garrison is thinking, this is their business opportunity, and they decided to do the Class A at those rate structures and build this quality of home or apartment buildings for these folks. Now, whether or not it blends with the broader needs of businesses and the broader community, that's an issue that we go discuss with our government leadership. As well as, by the way, a lot of the push locally for affordable housing comes from the Tri-Lakes Chamber of Commerce. Because the businesses, want to have that supply of employees that serve all of us. So that's a balancing act, and that's a discussion I think that we need to have as a neighborhood people together. I don't know what forms, that might be a great form to add to run those meetings. We talk about that. And then take those messages back to the county and the town of Monument planning departments and the trustees so that they get an understanding. Maybe we don't want to flood with affordable housing, but we understand that the needs of the community are such that it needs to be balanced with all the types of housing for people to live in.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And what I'm going to say is I don't think a statement ever should be made that it's affordable housing, because frankly, it's just housing.
Yes, it's whatever the market, they want to do within this market.
This kind of, multi-family thing, monument, fine. It's just, from a public perspective, or tech trustees or county perspective, it shouldn't be classed as affordable housing, because it's not.
Good point.
You've been trying for a long time.
Yeah, thank you. And this is fairly minor, but fast forwarding when construction's underway, how late are they allowed to work? Because the new drill or the new well that they put up kept me up every night because that drill could not stop. And the light shined into the back of my house. So anyway, and for the residents that live nearby, the noise at night, when is that gonna stop? Is it 10 PM, 9 PM, by now?
And does the county have a,
Not necessarily, probably around 10, but.
Bob, is there anything from the county, Bob? No. Okay.
Who was drilling the well? Was that?
It was, well,
Well, there you go. You know some people you can talk to.
Jesse, the culture manager, and I'm like, can they do anything to stop the squeaking of the shaft? Because at night, it was just really high, I didn't sleep well for 2 nights, but it's done now. But it's still, I also lived near other developments that were new construction. And sometimes the workers continue working all night, and it's just very disruptive to sleep.
So,
Any other, yes, please.
one quick thing, this is originally, and still zone commercial,
yes,
not multi-residential, and you said there were 2 lots.
correct.
Where's the separation of the lots?
Right around where the base camp road is.
Right by where base camp road is?
Yeah,
That
basically.
general area.
Okay.
Here, yeah.
Okay.
Heath, can I ask you one extra question? According to the Land Development Code, the purpose of zoning is to locate particular land uses where they are most appropriate, considering public utilities, road access, and the established development pattern. We're switching this from commercial community that primarily serves adjoining neighborhoods to residential RM30, which primarily intended to accommodate moderate density multi-dwelling developments. So, can you tell us why this is the most appropriate space and why it promotes the community values here at your development?
Well, I think first and foremost, when we did our research on the master plan, it was identified that this area views multifamily as a primary land use. And so looking at the bigger picture beyond just basic zoning. So we started from there. And I think based upon the need for housing in Front Range in general, proximity to schools, access to I-25, that's where we felt that this would be a good location for
Would you identify yourself?
Pardon me?
Would you identify yourself?
Yeah, Mike Fogel with Seekers, HOA.
Okay.
Is there gonna be any lease term restrictions as it relates to 1 year, or you have a certain number of units that you're gonna allow to have a short-term lease? Or all of them are gonna be?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have control.
Yeah, so we have a property management in-house, so typically, depending on what the market demands, they might be doing a 12-month lease or potentially a 15-month lease, but traditionally, we're not going below that 12-month lease mark.
Okay.
Is there a specific reason why you asked?
Well, because some people are not, it could be a place to, while I'm building another house.
Yeah,
There
no,
are some places within the community that allow a short-term.
Yeah, well, I'd also add to that concern. Are you going to allow VRBO or Airbnb?
No.
Operations in that when you're turning over?
no, because that would require, well, first of all, we just don't allow that, period. And that would require just a bunch of new tenants coming in, and it's liability for us is through the roof, so we don't do that.
So these will be apartments, not condos?
Correct.
Are there any other comments from David, Bottom Water, or you, Matt?
I was wondering what the demographic you're aiming for here. Is it young families, is it retirees, or a mixture of whoever?
So, like, we built this product type in very, very similar submarkets before, and it just varies. It really does. Sometimes it is that, what we call transition, where it's someone looking for that down payment because they ultimately want to buy that $700,000 home, but they can't buy it today. And the school systems are so strong, they want to be in that school system today with that child while they save up the money, which is why we love the big house that we call the 2-story building, because the units are so big and it lends itself really close to that single family. Comparatively, like you said, we do get a lot of 55 and older people that want to get all the amenities and be close to maybe some family, but maybe that house doesn't have a spot for them to be in, so renting somewhere close by typically works.
I mean,
Questions?
that was my big question. The rest, I feel like we can just talk about via email or phone after the meeting.
Anything to share with the other folks, so any concerns or questions? So Woodmoor Water is, I have no issue.
Woodmoor Water, I know I said.
Water is irrigation.
Yeah,
You
so
got water
far,
for, you got.
we have water that we can supply and meet all the requirements, but I haven't done extensive modeling. So far, it's just been preliminary, so I haven't run specifics in my water or sewer model. So I don't know what kind of, if any, upgrades you might need, or, I don't recall if we talked about supplemental water service. I think it might have been mentioned, but I'm gonna go through the emails and follow up with you.
A quick question, how was the water retention pond size? Who did that work?
So that's us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working through a lot of those details as we go into the civil construction document phase. Where we're at right now, a lot of that's not figured out, but we do feel comfortable with the sizes of the stormwater detention pond that we have reserved.
A general rule of thumb that we use when we're laying sites out like this conceptually is 10% of the site.
Is this still like conceptual?
Well, we just haven't
Things to be
commenced, we
shuffled
haven't
around.
commenced actual engineering documents yet. So once that commences, that will become more fine-tuned.
I'll clarify a little bit. We have confirmed the detention pond is big enough to work.
And the two-story houses are kind of solidified, and we're not going to go to the 3 to 4, but as we did 4. Okay.
Really, the only thing, again, Brian already brought up is any type of study you could do on the traffic off the base camp. Because you're talking about, right here, and it comes down the front here on the southern part of Woodmoor Drive, is really becoming an issue, traffic-wise. I know it's only twice a day, 5 days a week, a couple hundred days out of the year during school, but it's becoming a huge issue for our residents, the school district, and our WPS, our Woodmoor Public Safety Officers, are putting their lives in their hands out there some days. It's gotten so bad. And we had a teacher volunteer got run over last year. So it's an issue. That's one of our biggest concerns is how this could impact the traffic coming off of base camp onto Deer Creek onto Woodmoor Drive.
Yeah, I think it would behoove us, I don't know who would do it for us, but if we could write that issue up as a general traffic issue, because to me, it's also, it goes back to the flow along Monument Hill Road during the school hours, up and down, and the junction points both 105 and County Line Road, and then the flow back into Woodmoor, and then the middle school, if you flow back into Woodmoor Drive, then you've got the middle school buses and parents coming in.
I've personally spent a lot of time with the CDOT, well, El Paso County roads, because they own all the roads up here, for those who don't know that. And, their attitude probably obvious is they don't have funding. Hear that a lot, number one. Number two is that they're not going to go out and spend millions of dollars to fix an issue that they view as being an issue for 20 minutes a day, twice a day.
Yeah.
And school is letting it out, and that's what we're talking about. The academy, the high school, the other high school, the middle school, we don't have any issues with the elementary school. But we've talked about all 4 of those schools.
It's a sorry conversation, and in another lifetime, in another place, we were always talking about getting crossing signs at the railroad crossing. And they wouldn't do it, and then it's amazing what happened after somebody got run over by a train.
Yeah.
They were up in 30 days, because there was a lawsuit filed and blah, blah, blah. So, but I know that Brian also had an issue though about the intersection and having potential lights. So that needs to be incorporated, that comment we get back to Matt and then let you guys start working through transportation. We can help talk to the county commissioners too for you if we need to help push from both sides a little bit.
Yeah, we would really like a track, because our office will stand out there on the little road out there on the front road over by Holly Ridge.
Are there any other issues then in the back that if somebody wants to, or questions that you might have, or are we all questioned out?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Again, I don't know where we go from here. Next steps, I think we're working, getting some written up on the transportation issue. If there's other concerns, you can certainly forward them to, I don't know how people can get there, but I guess you could forward them to me, and I can process them back through Heath and the Woodmoor folks, and we can, and our team. And my address is easy, it's president@nepco.org. I didn't put it up there, but
I'll leave a stack of business cards if y'all want.
you can get it to Heath, and Heath and I'll be in connection with that. And Matt, when we get something written up for this, I think the big issue I think that we've heard is concerns over a traffic evacuation plan, just the flow of people in and out, safety concerns.
Like at a future NEPCO meeting, is this something we try to recap?
Yeah, I
What the
think-
discussion was, and then if there are additional
Yeah.
questions or issues that come up, we can address that within the NEPCO context.
We'll have a board meeting this Friday, we'll talk about this meeting, but I know D38, I don't think we had any major issue, except for student population and access for fence or something, things like that. If you have anything that you want to work back through to Heath, I don't know, we'll figure out how to conduct this orchestra, get you the inputs and then respond. I think the bigger traffic issue, we talked about the big system-wide traffic issue, what's going to happen down at the junction of Woodmoor and 105 and things like that. That isn't necessarily immediately, but that they'll be contributing to that. But we've got as a community to have that traffic flow issue. It's bigger than just in and out of this. The fire department, I think, is good to go for now. Chief, is that, I don't want to speak for you.
They're meeting our request for sure.
All right, yes.
Will the water report be made public so that we have a chance to look at it? Because it doesn't sound like it's that far along.
The water report?
Yeah.
Well, we're already working on,
Yeah, we're required to do a water sufficiency report, and that's not complete yet.
That's
But
what
it will be.
That's the report I was
And
wondering.
it will eventually be.
Will that be posted on the county website?
They usually are.
but I don't think that's not required for the rezoning.
No, correct.
It would be for the next.
Yeah.
For the next phase, it should be complete and posted on the chart.
Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but can the public file a note or a question or a comment right directly on EDAR site?
What do you mean, to have it posted on the
Yeah, I mean, if, as a member of, I think they did that, Beth, in the Red
Yes.
Rocks.
Yes.
They just,
All members of the community can write to the El Paso County
Yes.
Development Planning
And it'll be a part
and
of the
Community
report.
Development, blah, 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 whatever they're calling themselves right now, because they've changed in the last 3 years a couple of times. But yes, you can write directly to that. All the planning commission does read those. Everybody has certain requirements that they have to adhere to, and a lot of our concerns, unfortunately, don't fall until after the rezone is done, which is problematic. And again, like I said, the state and county do not require any kind of an evacuation certification.
You can always bring it up in the letters.
But bring it up in the letters.
Bring it up.
The commissioners all read it, you can write to all of your commissioners, not just the two. And the planning commission also reads all those letters. The more letters, the better.
So that's a general note then to the people here today. If you've got concerns, water, transportation, evacuation, whatever that might be, there's mechanisms the county has in place. So you can write a letter and submit that independent of anything we're doing here. It's just a voice for your area, your community. So I encourage you to do that. We'll forge ahead with the main issue of working the transportation and somehow get back with you folks, to the county commissioners somewhere and talk about, we want this is their issue so much as the evacuation concern.
You want a bigger study.
And the broader transportation study because it ripples into other junction points.
So you want this area to have a study,
It
not
would
just,
be
we're
good.
not just talking about this project, we're talking bigger.
we're growing, we continue to grow here. And, you know, Jackson Parkway is being done with kind of monument mainly the focus there. Nina's doing that work with everything. But somehow all that stuff pours into other highways, right? It comes into county roads, and the county's got it. When they had their big planning meeting a few months ago over here at the town hall, I went to that, and they had county people, they had state people, the town of Monty did a pretty good job of getting all the stakeholders from the YMCA and all the people along Jackson Creek Parkway. But what wasn't clear is how are those entities in integrating their plans so that the build out on 105 going east is done in conjunction with what's going on in Jackson Creek Parkway, so we don't get choke points for, we have in the plan, you know, 18 months from now, we'll fix that intersection. You know,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, everybody sits there and goes, you know, plays the Jeopardy song as they sit at the stoplight, waiting to get through. So I think in general, there's a concern that we have in terms of the community spending time, you know, at intersections that if we had done some planning and added the turn lanes earlier, reduces accident potential and just waste of time. So I think there's a broader transportation issue, but there's one specifically for here around access for emergencies and also just congestion along these roads during mornings and afternoons, especially when the students are going in and out. There's probably a few hundred cars alone just going in and out of school at intersections, easily.
Close to
Plus buses.
Now, as the property is zoned today, it allows for retail, hotels,
Yeah.
It does.
offices, so, I mean, you've got
Yeah.
massive traffic.
We would
generation, no matter what.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
the 20% isn't that much, actually. I don't think, considering what you're putting in there.
It's based
All right, with that, I guess we'll wrap it up. Any other final comments, anybody? Well, thank you so much for coming out, and I don't know what we'll I don't know if we'll come back on this or something, talk transportation or whatever it is might be, but for now, we'll proceed ahead with your comments on the website. We'll work transportation issues and we'll see what we get from here.
My email's on email, so you can email me right away if you want to.
Very good, thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for